right. Hey guys, we are back here once
Hello.
again for the next episode of A Conversation with Kely, episode 101.
Woo.
And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, covering a show that I think that is pretty long overdue, I would say. We're
Oh,
going to get into all of that. But before we do, I am here with my lovely and beautiful co-host, Ali. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just been chilling. I went for a walk earlier, and then later I'm going to see a movie and stuff with my sister. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty chill. How about you?
Always fun, always fun. I'm good. I had 2 days off of work, so I feel pretty refreshed. I work like
Yay!
11 to 6-ish tomorrow, so that's not going to be all that fun, but we'll see how it goes. What I am excited about is what we're covering, because I will say
Same.
right now, I think out of shows that we haven't talked about, this is one that's like it's been like this giant like flashing sign. It's like we need to cover this at some point, and we just never did. But we're finally going to do it now. We're finally going to cover the first 2 seasons of a show that I've definitely really been looking forward to, and that is the iCarly revival. This is a
I'm
show
so
that
excited.
I remember when it was first announced, I was like, I don't really know if this is going to work. But there's been not one, but 2 seasons of it already. And I figured, you know what? We haven't covered this yet. Might as well just do it now. So we're very excited to get into all of that. But before we do, I want to hear like your expectations when it comes to this show. What is your, fondness for the original iCarly and things like that? And how did you feel going into this show overall?
I loved the show when it was like on. Just because it was so fun, it was so quirky and just like very silly, and it was just like one of those positive shows you watch to get you in a good mood, or like if you're feeling down or something, and like everyone would just put it on and then they would be all like happy watching it, and then they would just laugh because all their jokes were always so fun and silly, and it's just one of those feel good shows. And then I honestly, going into the reboot, I was really excited for it. I mean, there was a little hesitation where I was like, it could be kind of meh, but honestly, I was very excited for it. And like, because obviously it's like a more mature iCarly, because obviously they're grown up, so it's a
Mhm.
lot of like adult stuff.
Right,
And
which we'll talk about.
I was very excited going into it, and I'm just like, I can't wait to see like the dynamic and everything that they do.
Yeah, so iCarly was a show that, I will always hold a special place in my heart because,
Same.
back in the day, like Nickelodeon, Disney Channel shows, that's all I used to watch when I was younger. Those were like the main things that I watched, and iCarly was a show I watched on a pretty consistent basis, I would say. It was a show that definitely was a pretty big part of like my childhood and whatnot. And it's also a show that I think, had a very specific kind of humor. It definitely did a good job of like, talking about like internet culture of the time and things like that. But it is also a show that I recognize that due to the person that created it, who we will not mention because he does not deserve any
No.
attention whatsoever,
Mm-mm.
despite him getting credited in this show, which I understand he worked on it. It's fine. But because of like him being behind it and other writers, there are a lot of problematic elements of the original iCarly in terms of like supporting characters. I think especially because we rewatched a bunch of episodes like prior to
We
the
did.
survival, and I think we definitely picked up on like, yeah, there are some problematic elements in there for sure. The way that they depict any like
But like how they handle things.
yeah, the way they depict any like POCs, the way that they would handle certain topics, it just was very much done in bad taste. And it's one of those shows where like it's fun to watch, but that is definitely something that you do recognize. So that was something that I was excited going into this revival, is that this is going to be something different. We have more representation, which we'll talk about,
Oh
and things
yeah.
like that. We have a whole new creator. And the more I saw of it marketing wise, despite my initial hesitation, I started to get a lot more excited for the show because I thought, okay, this seems like one of the few revivals where the passion is there. Everyone seems like they want to be a part of it. You have the majority of the cast returning. Obviously, Jeanette McCurdy is not going to come back for reasons of her own because,
Oh yeah.
she she
Love
shouldn't
her.
subject herself to something that she's not comfortable with doing. So, you know,
Yes,
I wouldn't expect
exactly.
her to come back for this. But having Miranda Cosgrove, Nathan Kress, and Jerry Trainor all on board, that definitely did give me a lot of hope when it came to the show. But
Oh, yeah.
especially when they dropped that first trailer, I think I really got the sense of like, this could actually really work. This might actually
Yeah.
be good. If they're able to go in the direction that I think they're going to, I think this has a lot of potential. And you know, I'll just get my thoughts right out of the way. This is definitely one of the few revivals that I think very much does work. iCarly almost at points feels kind of like a different show.
It
This
really
has a
does,
very different
honestly.
sort of, it has a similar tone. It's not like it's like darker or anything like that, but it's a lot more mature. It's a lot more sophisticated. And I
Mhm.
think the reason why it works as well as it does is because it is one of the rare revivals that knows its audience. It knows that
Yes,
the
it
audience that
is.
is going to watch this show, you know,
Like, it's
aren't
for the
just,
people that were, like, growing up in during the time that,
yeah.
because like, when they were at that age when the original series was
Mhm.
on, and then now everyone's grown up, so it's
Yeah,
this
and
for
I
that
think that's
time
something
frame.
that a lot of revivals very much struggle with. I look at, say, you know, revivals like And Just Like That, for example,
Oh,
that just came
no.
out. Look at something like, you know, look at other revivals that have come out. They're always trying to cater to the demographic that the show was originally trying to cater towards.
Yeah.
And even Girl Meets World to an extent, I would say, because it was on Disney Channel and it was still trying to target a younger demographic. iCarly wisely recognizes that the people who are primarily going to be interested in the show are the ones that grew up with it. And so it wisely decides, let's also grow up with it. And I think the show is much better because of it. And it's a show that
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, you know, when we talk about like some of the better revivals on TV, this is definitely going to be one of the first ones I think that come out of people's mouths saying, you know, iCarly actually really worked. But what did you think of the show overall?
I really enjoyed it, honestly. I mean, there are some episodes that were a little iffy, not as great, but I mean, I
Yeah.
still liked them. I still enjoyed them. Like, I didn't dislike any of the episodes.
Oh, yeah, no,
Um,
same.
I just overall, like, I thought this was a great series, both seasons.
Mhm.
Some really funny dialogue and some like
Yes.
really amazing and like heartfelt dialogue. And then there's also important stuff, like they touch on important topics, and it's just very enjoyable, very fun, just very feel good, and like just a show that gets you in the best mood.
Yes, definitely. I think we should just go ahead, starting off talking about some of the performances here.
Yeah.
I'll say right off the bat, you know, when it comes to Miranda Cosgrove, got right back into the role. Like there
Oh
was
yeah.
really no sort of
So good.
like hesitation or anything like that. It didn't really feel like she has stepped away from this role for a bit. She really didn't miss a beat when it came to this character. I feel like Carly still has that same like prissy attitude that she did in the original
Yeah.
show. You know, she cares a lot about like her image and things like that, but also cares a lot about like her friends. And I think Cosgrove
Mhm.
does a really good job in carrying the show. I will get into some of my issues when it comes to the show overall, but I thought Miranda Cosgrove just did a really good job stepping right back into it. You find
I think
yourself,
so too.
yeah,
Like, she just always has so much passion for this
yeah,
role, and she was just like still like that sweet but also prissy girl, but
yeah,
also like she very much cared about her friends and her
oh yeah,
family. And I mean, obviously, yeah, she does care about her image a little bit too,
yeah,
but like not in like a total selfish way.
yeah,
Because obviously
definitely.
she, but yeah, she did such a good job, and like I'm very proud of her.
Yeah, and I mean the good thing about what I think was really impressive about her step back into this role is that she hasn't acted that much in quite a few years. She's had like little gigs here and there, but nothing like too major. And so it's really great to see her like stepping back into a role that not only she did really well, but I think maybe gives an even stronger performance this time around. You can really feel that passion throughout this show. It feels like she wanted to do this. Like she wasn't coerced into doing this revival. Nobody
Agreed.
like bribed her or anything like that. This is something that she wanted to do, and it radiates throughout the entire screen. And I think the same does go for Nathan Kress here, who doesn't have quite as much to work with in the first season. I'll get into that, but he doesn't have a ton to
Yeah.
work with. Freddie is kind of like down on his luck. He is going through like he had a failed like startup company, and he's trying to kind of like find his purpose in the first
He
season,
is, yeah.
but he's still that lovable, like techie, like nerdy guy that you just really liked in the original show. He hasn't really lost his touch in that way. And I
Like
think
you're really drawn to him.
yeah, I think Kress still does a really good job in this role. Freddie's still a character that I constantly find myself relating to in terms of like, you know, all the techiness and things like that. I think he's just such a fun character to watch, and Kress still does a really good job in this role for sure.
Oh, for sure. Like I thought he did such a good job on this with this role. Like, I mean, I loved him watching the first series, and now it's watching this. It's just like he's so grown up. But and I mean, yeah, season 1 he didn't have a ton to do, but like season 2 got even more. But yeah, he still did great. Like he was just like this nice guy who was always such a good friend, and he's super caring and very techie nerdy, and he's just like so lovable and likable. And I think everyone just really draws to him.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, look, the big standouts always of this show, I think forever will be the standout, is Jerry Trainor as Spencer.
Oh yeah,
just such a national treasure, I think, as an actor. Jerry Trainor, you put him in anything, he's gonna get a laugh out of me. He knows how to entertain, he knows how to bring the fun, and I thought they did such a great job. And they do some really fun things, I think, with Spencer as a character. He has accidentally become rich because people have like found his art and like seen it as something a lot more like special than it was and things like that. And I think it's just a really fun idea what they decided to do with Spencer. And I think that he's constantly bringing the comedy. He constantly is bringing the fun. And I think Trainor, out of everyone, it felt like he was the one that was most excited to return to this series. Like he was just so ready to get back into the goofiness of Spencer, and he just stepped right back into the role.
Yeah, he's just always so likable and so funny, hilarious, and he's just that fun older brother, but he's also very protective and everything.
Oh yeah.
But like he's so grown up now, but he's still that same quirky self. And like I really did like the dynamic of how they like handled this character.
It's a different dynamic now because they're all adults, but you still do feel that relationship between him and Carly, which you really do just like latch onto their as brother and sister. I thought overall, you know, he was just a lot of fun to watch. But we have some new characters as well to talk about here. There are 2 new additions to the show, and I was very excited to see what they were going to do with both of these characters, not just because of the fact that, well, we have new characters, but also the fact that, again, they're both, they're both Black characters. And that's something that in the original show, you know, most of the time when we had a character that was a POC, they just weren't portrayed in a very good manner. They were portrayed kind of demeaning at points, and it's good to see some positive, you know, representation in the show. And that's what I really like when it comes to the character of Harper. I think Harper is a great addition. Now, right off the bat, we are not going to in any way compare her to Sam. They are not in any way similar. This is a whole new character. This is someone that Carly has met, since her time in Italy. And I think Harper, to me at least, fit right into this show. I was a big fan of her character. You see the support that she really does have for Carly, but you also can see what I love about Harper is that this is someone who is so unafraid to just be herself. Harper is loud. Harper is someone who's very into fashion. Harper also is queer herself, so you'll see her bring up like other people she's dated, and I just feel like this is just a really great addition to the show. She brings something to the show that wasn't there before. I think the friendship between her and Carly is really just something you do find yourself latching onto. And despite the fact that, you know, Harper's a character that has just been introduced in the show, the way that she's written, it feels like she's been there all along. They do a really great job, I think, when it comes to her character. I think she fit in very nicely.
Oh yeah, I like adore her. She's so funny, and she's like an amazing person, and she's like such a good friend to Carly, but she also is just like very herself. She's so just very fun and passionate, and she's like a little party girl too. But she's like very supportive and like caring about her friends, and especially Carly. Definitely. And I just think she really like blends in with this cast, and she's such a great addition that like it's not forced, and she's just like very passionate and happy to be there, and it seems like she just truly loves what she does, and I'm just
Yeah,
so happy that she was like cast.
And I think similar to like, you know, what we're talking about, or like this one of the better revivals, I think one of the things that makes it one of the better ones is her character. Because a lot of the time when you try to put new character, when you try to like implement new characters into a revival, it feels forced. It feels like this person just doesn't really fit. This person doesn't really go with the vibe of the show. Harper fits perfectly. She's just as eccentric. She's just as quirky. She really does fit into the minutiae of everything. But what I also like about Harper is that she feels a little bit more authentic than some of the other characters that we have. It feels like at points, you know, a lot of these characters are, you know, just really crazy, really ridiculous. And Harper's the one that's kind of like the real one of the bunch. And I think that works really well for her. So, and Laci Mosley is just so good in this show.
She's amazing.
She really just brings so much like fun to this character, and I just really like what she ended up doing here. Now, the other character to talk about is someone that I'm not gonna lie, I was a little worried about. I was a little worried about this character, the character of Millicent. Let's talk about her. She is played by Jaidyn Triplett. Right off the bat, Jaidyn Triplett, I think, is very good as this character. She's very spunky, she's very sassy, and she's someone that is, you know, very much this, you know, she starts off kind of like this rival of sorts to Carly. She doesn't really want much to do with, you know, Carly's web show and things like that, kind of like swears it off and wants to like do her own thing. But I do think as the show goes on, she kind of starts to like fit into her own role. The problem is with Millicent is that while I do think she fits well into the show, there are many points, at least especially in the first season, where it just doesn't really seem like they know what to do with her. They want her to be this like antagonist of sorts, but it never really quite works for her. I think what elevates the character is Jaidyn Triplett's performance, because I think she is just really great here. She like I said, she really does bring this like spunk to this character that I think works out really well, and I definitely did enjoy her the more the show went on, I think.
Yeah, I honestly like enjoyed her too. I was a little like weary at first, like, because I didn't know if she would like fit in or just or the dynamic. But I mean, as the show went on, she honestly is incredible. Like, she's so good in this role, and I just love how sassy and snarky and funny she is. Just like about her little remarks and her quotes are just so funny. Her one-liners, they're just iconic, and I just think she's like a great character and a great addition to this series. And like, I just love watching her. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else besides this. But
it's a really good breakthrough performance, I think, for Triplett overall. I think, like I said,
I can see her being like a breakout star.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think she already is based on the show. But yeah, I think both of these actresses, like I said, they bring a lot to this show. I think the cast chemistry is still very much there, and it's definitely one of the things that you very much do latch onto in the show. There are other actors we could talk about, but those five really are like the mainstays here. We get a little bit more with like Freddie's mom and things like that, but it mainly is just those five that there are to talk about. And that's something I do appreciate.
They're like the mains, so that's why.
Yeah, and that's something I did appreciate. I like that they haven't tried to like forced any other character to like, you know, upstage them or anything like that, or like try to add all these new characters in. They really just, they concentrate on Carly, Freddie, and Spencer, but then also add in new characters to bring up a whole new dynamic. And I think
they really focus on those five the most.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the directing here, because like I said, obviously we have a whole new showrunner, and I think she does a really good job, Ali Schouten. It feels like she had this passion for iCarly. She saw an idea of what this show could really be, but she knew that she had to make some changes. She needed to do some different things. And I think what she did really well when it came to the show is she kept the quirky and fun nature of the original show. But again, she added this like more mature sort of adult feel to it. This does not really feel like a show that kids are supposed to watch. And that's something that I appreciate.
This series like is kind of just like a typical comedy, and like an adult comedy with all like that you normally
say typical. It definitely has like its own like
it has like not like typical, but in that like most senses, but like it just seems more like one of those kind of shows but obviously it has its own feel and story, but it just like this is definitely way different because it's like an adult comedy, so it's so much more different. It's not just a kids show.
Yeah, and I think that what I like about Schouten is that she really does commit to it. This is not one of those instances where you see a trailer and you see like Spencer drinking beer and you see Spencer, cursing and things like that. And that's only like a few moments of the show. No, she really does commit to that feel. This feels a lot more adult. It feels a lot more authentic, and it feels a lot more lived in, and it doesn't feel forced in any way. It just feels like these characters have grown up, and so their dialect's going to change a bit. The way they carry themselves is going to change a little bit. And I thought that's something that Schouten did a really good job with. You could tell that she sought out to revive the show, but not completely change it. She just wanted to update it a bit for to make it feel a bit more adult. And I thought that she did a really good job with it. Again, I think it's one of the better instances of directing that I've seen for something like this.
It's like, very adult, and like the directing was, excuse me, it's honestly very incredible. And I think she did a phenomenal job. And just like, they literally touch on like they drink, they swear, they literally talk about like sexual things and stuff. It's like so much.
There's an episode that's about almost having a threesome. Like
I know, it's like so much more different than the original series.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that they do a really good job with. But the other thing I do want to talk about in the show is some of the things with the writing, because this is where we get more into season 1 versus season 2, because season 1, I will say, I think is a really good season, but there are definitely some things that do bring it down. For me, when it comes to season 1, the hook of this show going into it is Carly is basically creating her own new web show. She wants to start out on her own. She wants to bring back iCarly, but it's more grown up now and things like that. And I think the problem with season 1, at least for me, is it's a little too focused on Carly. Every episode revolves around her and her like romantic escapades or something she's trying to do with her job or her friendship with Harper. And I understand there's a lot that the show needs to introduce to us because it has been a while since we've seen this character. But at points, it feels like it is a little too Carly-centric in the first season. And that is something that... honestly. Yeah, that's something that did...
I mean, I still enjoyed it, but I mean, season 1 could have been at least a little bit more of other characters.
Yeah, because it feels like characters like Freddie, Spencer, they're just kind of sidelined this season. Freddie, like I said, throughout most of the season, he's kind of being beaten down a lot. He is really kind of like struggling for work. He doesn't really know what he wants to do. He doesn't have much direction. And he also has a strained relationship with Millicent. She doesn't really see him as her father. They are not really in the greatest place, but he's trying to be the best possible father that he can to her. But aside from that, there isn't really a lot given to Freddie throughout season 1. Like I said, it's very focused on Carly and her kind of, just us seeing like the day-to-day lives of like what she goes through, whether it has to do with, her trying to find a new love interest or her trying to, work on something with her job or something like that. And I think the show does do a good job with that. I just think that, when we talk about season 2, which we will in a little bit, I think season 2 is just a better example of what this show does best. I think season 1, the potential is there for sure. And the comedy is honestly never been better. Like, this show is absolutely hysterical. I was in stitches at points when it came to... Yeah, when it came to some moments in terms of comedy.
The one episode I thought was so funny was when we were in the train going to Rhode Island. The one where...
Oh, that was a great episode. Yeah, when they went on a train to Rhode Island.
Well, when we did, when we were watching, because we were trying to finish it then. The episode where the sex song plays.
Yeah, that's definitely a really big standout in terms of comedy. That was very funny.
It was hilarious.
The other thing that I think this show does do well, before I get more into, like I said, some of my negatives, is I do think it touches upon some internet culture stuff very well here. We touch upon cancel culture a little bit. We touch upon performative activism and things like that. The episodes 2 and 3 of season 1 in particular, episode 2 is about this guy that Carly starts dating, and it seems like it's gonna go really well. It turns out this guy has this whole like hatred for iCarly because of something that happened back in the day, and he kind of wants to like get back at her for it. So things like that I think are really cool. And then episode 3 is about Carly basically has to she goes on this like she takes this photo, and it ends up going viral, and everyone really like has an issue with it, and she has to like make this apology. So things like that the show does touch upon pretty well, I think, in terms of
I honestly culture. Like I really like when they touch on these important topics, because it's like, especially
and they handle it well.
They handle it well, and it's also because it is like a new series, so they're really like it's very comedic, but they also touch on the important stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the show does do a pretty good job with. Although I will say I would like a little bit more of that. We don't get a ton of that in season 2. Season 1 is a little bit more focused on like the internet culture. So that is something I do want to see like them do more of. But that was definitely something that I did appreciate. The other thing that I think the show does do well, though, is let's talk about from a nostalgia perspective. This is something that I think definitely is going to be a worry to people. Are they just going to beat us over the head with references constantly? Are they just going to, constantly make note of things that we already know from like seasons 1, the original show? And yes, they definitely do have some winks and nods to the original series for sure. But they always do it with some kind of purpose. Like they bring back some characters, and I don't feel like there was a cameo that's been wasted so far. Every single person that they've brought back, they've done something with. It's never felt like, oh, this person's just here like just so we can reference it.
Yeah, they didn't like waste the character. They actually had a story.
Yeah, like a good example is there's an episode in season 1. It might be my favorite episode of season 1, to be honest with you. And it involves Neville coming back. And they could have very easily like rehashed something they did in the original show, where he's trying to like get back at Carly, and he's trying to like sabotage her web show or something like that. But cleverly, they don't do that. Instead, we focus on Neville having this wedding of sorts to this girl, and Carly, because of all of the because of all the negativity that Neville has shown, she doesn't feel that he's someone that's capable of getting married. She doesn't think that he'd find someone. So she's convinced that, this girl is a robot. And we kind of go through this fun little idea of, whether or not that's actually happening. It turns out what's actually going on is that, he was trying to, spoilers, he was trying to like create this wedding for him and Carly to see if like she'd finally just fess up to it, but he actually does end up falling in love with this girl. So things like that I really enjoyed. It was a good way to like bring these characters back, but not have them be in like the worst possible places, but also and kind of show that like they've moved on, but also not change the character in any way. Like Neville still feels the same. It just feels like he's a little bit more mature now. He's a little bit older. He's not going to be as obvious as he was in the original show. And that's something that I really did appreciate. So they don't necessarily rehash anything. They bring back Nora in episode 2, and it's not really anything crazy. You think maybe it's going to be like they're going to try to rehash something, but they really haven't done that at all in the show. And that's something that I definitely have appreciated. It's mostly been original ideas, and I think that's what has definitely benefited the show.
Like they really like are very creative with this show, and they don't steal ideas from other things. Like they're actually very original and very authentic.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like they are just like shamelessly referencing things that happened within the other seasons. When they bring these characters back, they have a purpose, and that's something I definitely did appreciate overall. So I think that's something they do well. But like I said, getting into season 1, because I do want to talk about season 2 and how I think season 2 is just a bit better than season 1 overall. The only things that do bring it down for me, one of them they have not fixed, and unfortunately, the one thing that does hurt this show is Carly's web show in particular.
Mhm.
We hear about in episode 1, we hear about how she's going to create her own new web show and things like that. But aside from like a couple bits here and there, we don't really know what her web show is all about. We don't really know what
That's
she
true.
does. We don't really get the focus that we did on the original web show. And I feel like that was part of the fun of the original show, is seeing, things from the web show like interwoven into the actual
Yeah.
show, and seeing like the effect that it has and things like that. Here, it just isn't quite as well dived into. And I feel like that's something that they still, unfortunately, have not fixed in season 2. We get a little bit more of a focus on it within the second season, but that's just something that I don't think they've done the best job with. I still have a lot of questions over my head, like, what exactly does she do on this web show? What is the point of it?
It
What do
seems
we
like
regularly see?
they definitely have, like, a few things here and there, but they don't really, like, touch much on it. It's just, like,
Yeah.
they show, like, one little portion, and then
It
you're like,
feels more like
"Okay."
a backdrop. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like it's as prominent as it was in the original show. And I'm not asking for it to necessarily be like as prominent, because I understand this is trying to do something a little different.
Mhm.
I just wish every now and then we would get to see a little bit more of like what really goes on during this web show, because then we'd have a bit more of an idea of what it's all about. Is it getting the same
Yeah.
success that like the original one is? Like we don't really get to see that, and that definitely does bring things down a little bit for me. But like I said, my biggest issue with season 1 is it's just a little too focused on Carly. The other characters here just feel just kind of confined to the background. Spencer in particular doesn't really have a lot going on this season. He's kind of just there for like fun little gags and things like that. I will say, though, something I do love about this new revival is his friendship with Harper. It's very unexpected. It's not really something that you would quite expect. There are points in the show where it seems like Harper might have a bit of a crush on Spencer. They kind of do hint at that throughout the
That's
show.
true, yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting dynamic what they end up doing there. It's very different from a dynamic we've seen with Spencer before, but it's definitely something I do really enjoy seeing. I think that they have a genuine friendship in this show, and I think it's something that I definitely do like touching upon. So I think little things like that they do a good job with. Like I said, with Millicent and Freddie, it really is just they have this strained relationship, but eventually they
Yeah.
do kind of work things out, and it gets
I
better
honestly
in season
I really
2.
like that they work things out, and it's like they've this season 2, they definitely have, like, this better relationship, which is just,
Yeah,
like,
and
really
I
cool.
think it's more believable. It's more believable in
It
season
really
2.
is.
Season 1, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. Like you don't really see him as your father, but they're kind of they're laying it's just laying on it a little bit thick.
Yeah,
Whereas season 2, I think they do a better job with that.
they do.
So that's something that I definitely was definitely was impressed by. But overall, I still do enjoy season 1. I think
Same.
also the last 3 episodes of this season feel very, very rushed. And I will definitely say that is
That's
something that
true.
does bring the show down. They introduce like all these new like love interests for Carly, and they introduce this love interest for Harper as
Yeah,
well. And I just feel that it wasn't quite as well dived into as it needed to be. There is
that's
a
true,
good
yeah, I
storyline for
agree.
Harper in season 1 involving her sister. There's this great recurring gag where she talks about how her sister was kidnapped and she didn't know what happened to her. Turns out she completely faked that kidnapping, and we actually get to see some reconciliation between the two. But that was another storyline I felt that was just a little bit rushed. I think they could
Yeah,
have
I
done.
feel like they really could have, like, delved deeper into that storyline.
Yeah, especially because like her sister and Spencer, like they develop this like relationship of sorts, and they don't really do much of anything with that. It's kind of
They
just like they like
don't.
each other, and then we don't really see that character at all in season 2. So I just kind of wish they did more with that overall. So again, I think there are some storylines that are just a bit rushed here, which is ironic because this season has 13 episodes and season 2 has 10 episodes.
Yeah.
But yet I think season 2 is way more well paced overall.
Mhm.
Um, But overall, I still did end up really enjoying this season. I think for what it is, it definitely does work really well. And I think that they did a good job in, developing everything. I think they're, for what it is, I think it works really well. I think it's a very fun show to watch. The characters, are back
I will
into their
say,
roles.
there's one thing like about what's her name, Pearl.
Oh, we got to talk about, we're going to talk about that in season 2.
Oh, right. Okay.
We're talking about season 1 right
Oh.
now. But yeah, season 1, definitely really do enjoy it. Let's get into season 2 though, because I do want to talk about some of the things that I think they definitely improved upon within season 2. The one thing right off the bat, I will say, season 2, I think does a much better job when it comes to the ensemble. Everyone feels like they have something to do this season.
There's just so much more.
Yeah, Freddie in particular kind of feels like a co-lead this season. He mainly because he has a lot more direction. He now has this thing called the Kevin app. It involves like pets and things like that. And that's
the
something
Kevin app, as in for you.
I mean, it involves pets, so probably not. But that'd be ironic because I've never had a pet in my life. But that's something that he is trying to kind of focus on throughout the show. And I think it gives Freddie, like I said, this bigger sense of direction, this bigger sense of purpose. And with that, it just makes him a much more compelling character this season. There's more to latch onto there. It feels like there's more hope. Him and Millicent have a better relationship. And that's something that I think they definitely improved upon within season 2 when it comes to Freddie as a character.
Yeah, I think like his character has so much more to do this season, and like with this app and just like just the story, it's so much more like just so much. There's just like so much more to him.
Yeah, definitely. Very much so. I think that's something that they do a really good job with. Spencer as well also has a lot more to do. He for a while again he's just kind of doing his wacky stuff, but then he comes across the groovy smoothie, but it's not the groovy smoothie that we used to know. It's very like run down. It's
very different.
It's a bit more vacated, and Spencer has an opportunity to kind of make it better again. So he does create this restaurant of sorts, and this is a storyline that I particularly gravitated towards. I like seeing Spencer like have something, serialized in a way where like he now has this thing that he wants to recreate, and he wants this restaurant to be the best that it can possibly be. I thought that was definitely a really good like storyline for him, and I'm interested in seeing where that's going to go. I know there hasn't been a renewal of season 3, but I would assume the rest of the show is going to be.
Yeah, if there is, I feel like there will be a season 3. And I can't wait to see more of like of his job and everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think. Yeah, so they really do give something more for all these characters to do. Millicent also, they kind of ditched the whole like secondary antagonist and make her way more of like this someone that's trying to grow up a bit too fast. Like that's kind of her character this season. She's constantly trying to like act a little bit more adult, act a little more sophisticated, but you can see that she isn't really ready for that yet. She isn't really, settled into that. There's a really good subplot like between her and Harper that I especially really liked, where she's trying to be Harper's best friend, and she's constantly like getting into like Harper's personal life and things like that, and you kind of see that like she again isn't really ready to become to go on these like adult adventures. So I think that also just works a lot better. Like I said, I think they do a lot more with the characters this season. I think as a result, season 2 is just a lot more satisfying overall than season 1
and I will say having Rachel Bloom, so good.
Oh yeah, she was great too.
She was an amazing guest star.
Yeah, just for one episode, like they did everything they needed to with that character. That's the other thing. This season is 10 episodes, and I think even with the shorter episode length, it feels a lot more well paced in that way. It also feels like the storylines that they have a lot more depth to them. It doesn't feel like season 1 where we're rushing through all this stuff. Season 2, they have a lot less breathing room, so they kind of just have to get into everything, and I think it works out very well. We also, I think, get easily the best episode of the entire show this season. It's episode 2, and it is this episode where Carly basically is taken to court because of Lubert. He is trying to sue her for like all the misery that she caused him and whatnot. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to cameos.
So
this episode is the perfect way to bring back a bunch of characters that we know, but not just like have them, you know, just reference things. Like they have a purpose within this story. Lubert is trying to, you know, victimize himself like he usually does. He's trying to look better than he is. He's trying to rekindle things with like Mrs. Benson, which is really creepy to watch, but also really funny.
So creepy, but it's so funny and silly.
Yeah, it's very fun to watch the way that whole dynamic plays out. You know, you have Chuck coming back, you know, which makes sense because of his like vitriol towards Spencer. Guppy comes back as well. And again, it's not like these characters are just back to just reference like their catchphrases and things like that. They have a purpose on this episode, and I think it's utilized very well here. For me, like this is the best of example of what this show does best, taking what worked in the original but making it a bit edgier, you know, giving it a bit more layers. I think they do a good job with that in this episode for sure. That for me, that's the best episode of this show so far.
Is so good. Like it's just so fun, but it's also very sophisticated and very like adult and just very mature and like so silly with like the Lubert stuff, but he's he's still like pretty much the same person, but he also grew up.
Yeah. Well, we think he did, and then we realize at the end he hasn't grown up at all. So which
like,
I think
he did, but
yeah, definitely. I thought that was so that was definitely a really good one. There's just a lot to really like, I think, when it comes to this season. Carly and Harper's friendship also feels a lot more well dived into here. We kind of get the sense that Harper tries to be this, you know, when it comes to her role in the friendship, you know, she wants to be the one to support her. She wants to be the one to help her out. You know, she wants to be the one to let Carly have these experiences. There's a great episode where they're playing a game Never Have I Ever. Carly realizes she really hasn't done all that much, and she wants to try to tackle all this stuff like within one night. And we realize that
be a badass.
she realizes that Harper like concocted all of this to kind of give her the sense of like, you know, you don't have to be this way, you don't have to be rebellious, like I love you for who you are. I thought that was a really like sweet, you know, story that they did between those two. Like definitely
that was so like wholesome. I love that so much.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that a lot. I thought that they did a good job with that. And like I said, going back to Millicent, you know, she eventually has this story with this character, Derek. This is someone that, you know, is in her school. She clearly has a bit of a crush on him. It seems like the two of them are kind of dating now by the end of the season. So I think that's going to be like a fun dynamic moving forward. Them sending, what is it, like whale calls to each other constantly over text. Again, I thought that was something that was fun to watch. But I do want to address one complaint with this season, because I know you were going to bring it up. Pearl. Let's talk about Pearl. So Pearl is introduced in the first episode. Good character, yes. I do enjoy her character. I think that the actress is really good. The problem is, aside from being Freddie's girlfriend, there's really nothing that we know about Pearl. She really is just like Freddie's girlfriend who's trying to support him. You can tell that she has a lot of different, she has a lot of different interests than him, but you're really rooting for these two throughout the season. Really, her only storyline is that, you know, we do kind of have a through line this season when it comes to the will they, won't they between Carly and Freddie. It's not shoved down your throat. They started in the beginning of this season where, because the way season 1 left off, we had this cliffhanger with like Wes and Bo, which that goes absolutely nowhere, which I'm kind of glad, because to be honest, I didn't really care for either of them. So I'm kind of glad that didn't really go anywhere. They start like their own like little web show. And so basically to kind of like get back at them, Carly pretends to date Freddie, but you can tell he's really only doing it to be like a good friend to her. She's not really like reciprocating these feelings, but you also kind of get the sense that maybe he still likes her. Maybe he enjoys, you know, what's going on. And we get to the end of the season, and it seems like Carly is actually starting to reciprocate these feelings. appealing. So I think they're definitely hinting at like these two probably getting back together at some point. They're probably going to, when the show ends, they're probably going to end up together. The problem is because of that, Pearl just doesn't really have a lot to latch onto as a character. And
she's literally just like, there just to support Freddie. Like, I hope if there's a season 3, I hope they get more into her story and like her growing up and stuff like that. Because like she is interesting. She just needs to they just need to delve deeper.
Yeah, I just wish that two things. One, I wish that they had spent a little bit more time on their relationship so we would get to like them a bit more. And so when we get to that moment in the finale where, Pearl walks in on Carly and Freddie and they're having that conversation and she says that like Freddie's only with her because he loves Carly and he can't be with Carly and things like that. I think that if they would have spent a bit more time on Pearl herself and their relationship, that scene would be even more effective because we would have already had the time to connect with Pearl as a character, but we really don't get a lot from her. And I think that definitely did kind of bring the season down a bit, but that's really the only thing I think that actively hurts this season for me. The only other issue I'd have is that it does still feel like the Millicent character at points. It does still feel like they don't really know what to do with her, but I think that is still fixed by the Derek storyline at the end. So that's not really like a huge complaint of mine. Oh, the other addition, Josh Peck actually has a huge role in this season, which I was very surprised about. I thought this was going to be like a one-off character, but he's very much not. Josh Peck is, what is he like? He's like interning or he's helping out Carly with the web show. And he's a really fun addition. I think that
he's really funny.
Yeah, there's a great episode where like him and Freddie are constantly butting heads because they both want to help out Carly and she takes them to like this escape room. We get a really good callback to Carly being like claustrophobic and things like that. Again, things like that I think the show does do a really good job with. But he was on it a lot more than I expected. I thought he was only going to be in one episode. He's in, I think, like 3. It ends up being in like 3 episodes this season.
3, something like that.
Yeah, so I hope that we get to see more of him moving forward because I enjoy his character a lot. I think he's a really like fun presence and I like what he brings to the show. And he also gives us a chance to like kind of see the web show a little bit more, some of the ideas that are going on. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to really like, I think, when it comes to season 2. I think it's just a lot more successful. And it's not like season 1 wasn't good. Like season 1 is a good season of the show. Season 2 is just that much better. The comedy is better. The chemistry between the characters feels a lot more natural. They find a lot more for the secondary characters to do. They don't feel like secondary characters. It feels like one whole ensemble. There's stuff for Freddie to do. There's stuff for Spencer to do. There's stuff for Harper to do. We get there's a whole episode dedicated to Harper with like these, she's trying to help out all these drag queens. And we get
I love that episode.
Like Fashion Empire, which I like seeing. We kind of get the sense that Harper really wants to pursue fashion. She wants to have like a higher role. So I'm interested in seeing how that's going to go. Millicent has more to do with her and Derek, as I said. So that works out really well. And we also have this really good through line of the will they, won't they between Carly, but not doing it in a forced manner. Season 2 is just every bit better than season 1. It's really everything that I hope the show would really be. So before we do wrap things up, I'm going to take the time to grade both seasons here because that's something that we do. If you don't watch my channel, that is something I typically do is I grade seasons of television that I watch. So season 1, I am going to give a B, and season 2, I am going to give a B+.
I'm trying to remember what I gave season 1. I think it was either B+ or A or A-. I don't remember.
Okay.
I have to look. Like I searched on Twitter and I found my grade for season 2 though.
Okay.
So yeah, season 1 is either a B+ or A-. No, I think I'm just gonna give it a B+.
Okay.
And then season 2, I gave an A-.
All right. So with that, that pretty much does cover everything when it comes to iCarly. Very fun show. I will say right now, Paramount Plus really struggling as a streaming service. I talk about this a lot. They're not great if you're not watching here. Because here's the thing: if you're not watching Paramount Plus for like either reality TV or Star Trek, there really is not a lot to offer in terms of original content. Yes, there's stuff from like Nickelodeon and things like that, but their original content is very much lacking. I think iCarly is definitely one of the better successes for them. So I hope that they do renew the show. I hope they recognize just how much of how much this show is going to benefit them as a streaming service. I think everyone seems to really like it. I think that the, fan base that loved the original show has the same support and love for this show, if not more, especially because there aren't problematic people working behind the scenes. So I just hope Paramount Plus is able to recognize like how much they lucked out when it came to the show, how much they've kind of hit this golden mine of sorts. And I hope that they recognize that, in the midst of all of these shows and movies that are just not really doing them all that well, this is their one success. And I hope that they're able to latch onto it as a result, because I see the show, if they give it a season 3, I see the show going super far, and I think could see it lasting just as long as the original one.
Yeah, because this is just one of those shows you watch when you're like sad or upset or anything, no matter anything. It just puts you in a good mood, and it's just that feel good, wholesome, sweet show that we all love and what we all need.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, I looked again, and I could not find my grade on Twitter for season 1, but that's fine.
Wow. Well, other than that, though, I do think that is going to wrap up our review of the first 2 seasons of iCarly. This was a lot of fun to do, for sure. Yeah. Like I said, this is a review I think that's been kind of long overdue for a bit. We were going to review season 1, but we never finished season 1, and then we did finish season 1, so we just figured we would review both seasons in one video. But that's kind of it. Is there anything you want to say? Oh yeah, we got to plug things.
I mean, this was so much fun. I loved covering this, and if there's a season 3, I'm so excited to cover that one.
Yes, yes, and all the kooky, wild adventures of these characters.
Oh yeah, so excited for more, hopefully.
Yes. Also, we do want to make a few announcements here. First off, apply to Applause Survivor.
Yes,
it's going to be great. That's the VL. That is not where you apply. It's a Survivor game, but it's going to be Hairspray themed this season. Yeah. So if you're into either of those
and 60s.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think that we have a lot of cool stuff planned. We got a really great prod team, so we definitely would love to see.
Shout out to Jen Rudolph and Madison Kimmery.
Yes, we love both of them dearly. Very excited to have this prod team, and I think this game's going to go really well for us. Much better than the last one that we don't really talk about. But definitely look forward to. Look forward to my other channel, which is Applause Survivor Productions, where we will be keeping you up to date on what's been going on.
We both go on there and we just like post. Well, a lot of times we've been like literally like watching live streams and stuff with that account.
Yeah, we have. So.
And then of course, keep subscribing to this account.
Yes. Also look forward to our ongoing coverage of Ascendance Live Season 2.
We're probably going to cover episode 2 next Monday, but we'll see.
Next Monday as well.
Next Monday around 8 Eastern-ish, which is supposed to be our regular time, but sometimes we've had to go earlier before. But next week we will be covering Stranger Things predictions for the last.
Hold on. I need to find the thing.
For the last 2 episodes of season 4.
There it is. Yes, we will be covering our predictions for Stranger Things.
With our good friends, Grace and Henry.
Yes, very excited. This season's been wild, to say the least, so there's definitely a lot to talk about, and we're all really gearing up for those last 2 episodes, so we're very excited to see how that all does play out. But other than that, that's really it for this episode of A Conversation with Kely. As always, thank you guys for watching. We always
thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And remember, couples who podcast together stay together. Love you.